Hey, good morning, everybody. So we hear that yesterday in the United Kingdom, the government's immigration bill has been completely mangled by the House of Lords, who have put in four amendments to the bill, which essentially means that it has no teeth whatsoever and it's not worth the paper that it's written on. Now, I don't actually believe that this is anything more than a piece of theatre in the last days of the fake Conservative government. There's going to be an election, probably late in 2024. And they're pretending to try to be conservative now after 13 years of allowing pretty much open borders and raising net immigration and absolute gross immigration up to record levels, double, more than double what we had in the worst days of the Labour government of Blair and Brown. And they let rapid mass uncontrolled immigration begin and escalate. The fake Conservatives who promised that they would do something about it and have been promising they'd do something about it all the way through their 13 years of power have done absolutely nothing whatsoever and have let it get even more out of control. So now we have net immigration into the UK of 600,000 a year and gross immigration of 1.2 million a year. It's out of control, completely out of control. Along comes Rishi Sunak to be the Prime Minister in a coup. Essentially, he wasn't elected by the people as Prime Minister, but he comes after a string of terrible Prime Ministers that both Labour and the fake Conservatives have given us. And he's now pretending that he's going to do something to clamp down on immigration and put through this bill. Well, of course, the Lords, the House of Lords, the upper house of Parliament in the UK is stuffed full of liberal, lovey lefties. And so what they've done to this bill is they put four amendments into the immigration bill, as I said, which essentially leaves it meaningless. So what they've done is they voted to say that the UK must honour its international treaties. Well, you would, I mean, in a way, that does make sense. We are in international treaties. If we are in them, we're in them for a purpose we have to stick to them. My point is, and what a lot of people have been saying for years and years, is we need to leave the international treaties that force us to have our borders open. And that includes the ECHR, the UN Global Migration Compact, the Barcelona Declaration, the Marrakesh Declaration, and the UN Convention on Refugees 1951 itself. The thing with that convention is it was written for a completely different world that we have today. And it was mostly to provide refuge and asylum for people escaping the Soviet Union and the Soviet bloc, East Germans going to West Germany, for example. That was the main refugee situation in the 50s and 60s. When it was changed, I think it was 1966, to widen the scope of the Refugee Convention so that it would apply to the whole world rather than just Europe, it was still inconceivable that there would be a mass flood of immigration from the southern world into the northern world, if you like, from Africa and Middle East, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, into Western Europe and the United States. No one would have even thought that what we were seeing today could have happened. So that convention that was written in 1951 just doesn't work today in 2023, where you've got a completely different situation. Even Tony Blair said that in 2002. But if he says it, it's okay. If I say it and someone else who wants to control our borders says it, we immediately get called all kinds of names by people who benefit from open borders, the NGOs, and of course behind them, billionaire property developers and so on, who make a lot of money out of open borders, and also, global corporations that want continual cheap foreign labor rather than training up local people in the countries to do the jobs that need to be done. There's a whole issue there, which could be the whole subject of another video. But back to the point, that was one of the amendments that the Lords made to the immigration bill. The thing is with this, you see, it just shows up how ridiculous the immigration bill is and how it's set up to fail. Because Rishi Sunak there and his government is saying, we're going to introduce a law that does this, but it is in conflict with and contradicts the treaties that we're in. What we need to do to control our borders is come out of the treaties that force our borders to be open. But no one is even willing to talk about that in the fake Conservatives or the Labour Party. Obviously, Labour wants open borders. They want even more mass immigration. The fake Conservatives pretend they don't, but then they put up all of these straw men, and these things which are set up to fail, but they won't tackle the root issue. And of course, then everything that they do is going to fall on its face because it was never going to succeed anyway. So what this amendment does actually is shows that the immigration bill was never going to work in the first place. It's just a piece of theatre to make. It's a little bit of red meat for the people who are still deceived and think that the fake Conservatives actually do want to do something about controlling our borders, when clearly they don't. They're just pretending that they're going to do it, but they're not. The other amendments that the Lords put into the immigration bill are that there should be no backdating. The law should not be applied retrospectively. So anyone who's already in the country illegally cannot be removed, which is just ridiculous. So it will only apply to people from whenever the law comes into effect, whether that's September, October, November, later on in the year. So everyone who's already here can stay, essentially, which means, there are millions of people in the country without the proper visas who are not here correctly. And, what should we do? I mean, you've got two choices. You can say, well, okay, they're here illegally, but we'll let them off. Or you can say, well, they're here illegally, they should be deported, and if they want to come back to the country, they should apply properly, like the people who do come legally, and do the proper paperwork, and apply at the embassies and the high commissions in their own country and work out a job or a university place before they come. I mean, I don't agree with the masses of students coming over. I think that needs to be reduced from 500,000 down to 100,000. It should be capped. But if people, we could take 100,000 foreign students a year, and people then can apply properly to come to the country and come through the proper means. And that's fine. If they come through the proper means and they migrate here legally for a legal purpose, for a purposeful reason, whether it's to work, to start a business, to study, to marry someone, obviously you've got family visas and so on, then yeah, of course, people should be allowed to come to the country. But they shouldn't be allowed to come to the country and stay if they jump the queue ahead of everybody else and come illegally. So what do? Do you say, well, we're just going to let everybody off, which is going to encourage more and more people to come in illegally? Or do we say, well, these people have jumped the queue. This is not fair that people come illegally and then they can stay and then they get rewarded for it. I mean, any other crime, any other illegal activity, you would say, well, if someone murders someone, if someone steals something, if someone defrauds something, if someone assaults somebody, they should be punished for their crime. There should be a sanction, a consequence to their crime. But if someone arrives in the country illegally, you have a whole swathe of liberal lefties who say, well, no, there shouldn't be any consequence for them. We should just let them off and reward them. No, absolute nonsense. If you have a house, what would you do if someone came into your house and you didn't want them in? Well, you'd grab hold of them by the scruff of their neck and throw them out, wouldn't you? So then they say, well, for our nation, we shouldn't do that. I mean, that's just ridiculous logic and ethics there. Anyway, sorry, a little bit of a rant on that. But you know, that's the situation. If someone comes to the country legally, they're welcome. And they're doing something which is good. They want to be here to contribute to the country. If someone comes illegally just to take the mick, well, then they're not welcome and they should be deported. And if at a later date they want to apply legally, okay, we'll let them apply legally and we can assess whether to let them in or not. Okay, the third amendment by the Lords is that unaccompanied children should have the automatic right to stay. Nothing should be done in any way to deport or detain unaccompanied children. The thing is, you know, what the vast majority of people who say they're unaccompanied children are 16 or 17-year-old boys. You know, they're nearly men. And they're quite capable of looking after themselves. They've travelled by themselves from Albania or Syria or Iraq through numerous countries to France, have a lot of money to pay the people smugglers to bring them over on a dinghy, and then they get here and again they get rewarded and given hotel accommodation and food and an Aspen card with 150 quid a month to spend on it. So if there are genuine children, okay, like 7 or 8 year old boys and girls, that's a different story. But I don't see any of them. There are no 7 or 8 or 9 or 10-year-old boys and girls coming across unaccompanied children. The people that are, well, maybe there are a tiny, tiny number of them. But usually they are accompanied by somebody who's maybe not their father or their mother. It's a handler of some kind who will then say, oh, well, I'm not related to them, but here they are anyway. The vast majority of people who come and say they're unaccompanied children are 16 or 17 or they're older. They are actually adults over the age of 18, sometimes even up to their 30s, but they look younger and they claim to be 16 or 17, and then they get the status and benefits and rewards of being classified as an unaccompanied child. This is just an absolute farce, and we shouldn't be allowing it because there's just so many people taking the mick out of this. Like, genuine children, okay, absolutely, you can take care of them. But the people who are 16, 17-year-old boys who've traveled through lots of safe countries, and 18, 19, 20, 25-year-old men who pretend to be children, they should be deported straight away, not allowed to stay in the country, as the Lords, the liberal lefty Lords, say they should be. The Fourth Amendment that they added to the bill is that suspected victims of human trafficking should not be detained until their cases are processed. This is a more difficult one. Obviously, genuine victims of human trafficking have gone through a lot of trauma, and you don't want to, add to the trauma. But again, this is something that a lot of people are trained by the NGOs to say, oh, I'm a victim of human trafficking, when clearly they're not. They're just saying this in order to be allowed to stay in the country. So if you put this into law, anyone who even says that will automatically be allowed to stay. And this means that the whole law will be completely meaningless, because if I'm arrested by the immigration department or the border force, whatever, someone is arrested to be deported, all they have to say is, I'm a victim of human trafficking, and then nothing happens to them. They stay for another 2 years, 3 years until their case has been dealt with. When it's clearly obvious that many people are not victims of human trafficking and have come illegally over in a dinghy, etc. They're not victims of human trafficking. They've got lots of money to pay the people smugglers. Some of their bills are paid by NGOs because they want to create chaos in our nation and many other Western nations. This is what's happening. And we need a law that will allow people who are here illegally, clearly are not genuine asylum seekers in any way, to be deported from the country, just as would happen in China, in Thailand, in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco, in Argentina, in all those countries. If you're in those countries illegally, you'd be deported straight away. And the liberal lefty lovies have got no problem with that whatsoever. But if you're in the UK or in the USA or Canada or Germany and you say, well, we should be able to do what China does, deport people who are here illegally, immediately they say, you're a racist, which is absolute nonsense. You know, they use one rule for one country and another rule for another. Now, it's clear that we have a huge, huge problem with illegal immigration, and it's causing massive problems in the economy, for public services, and also crime. And just this summer, there's reports all over the place of a huge increase in crime, particularly in seaside resorts like Skegness and Bournemouth, so on. People are being assaulted, women, children included. And the mainstream media will never report on who's doing this, but it's clearly obvious from, you know, people who are genuine citizen journalists outside the mainstream media will tell you the truth of who is responsible for the huge increase in crime. And it is migrant crime for the most part, and that's caused by Labour and the fake Conservatives for over 25 years, deliberately not controlling our borders and not keeping out people with criminal intent. And that needs to change. So please do come and join me in the Heritage Party, because we will be strict on immigration. We'll push the illegal boats back to France, and we'll have strict caps on work visas and student visas. And we'll work to remove people who are in the country illegally. We won't have an amnesty for 1 to 1.5 million people who are in the country illegally, as Labour would and as the fake Conservatives want to do. Boris Johnson clearly stated he wanted an amnesty for people who are in the country illegally. That's completely the wrong thing to do, because everybody will claim it, and then it will just encourage more people to come in the future, putting more pressure on public services, more pressure on housing, and increase the crime wave that we've now got going on even more. So, heritageparty.org, we're the first party to say that we need to control our borders and cut down on immigration and push illegal boats back to France and cap immigration in certain categories, work and student visas particularly. So we're the only party that has a full common sense plan on this. So please do join me at heritageparty.org. It's a difficult, thorny issue. It's an issue, if you talk about, you always get accused of being something, but it's something that needs to be dealt with for everybody's benefit. So thanks for listening, everybody, and I hope you have a good day.